Welcome back, team, on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, what shall we talk about this evening? Let's talk a little bit about, I guess you could say there's we'll call it a potpourri of information. How's that? A mix of a little bit of everything. One of the things that had come to mind that I wanted to actually a few things did, and so I couldn't really settle on a specific topic. So I'm just going to call this Potpourri 1. Hopefully I can spell it correctly. But so in your organization, actually it's been over a decade ago, more than a decade ago. I was curious when you move the work week from, say, a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week, or any variation of change of days, right? What kind of impact that actually had, because your gut tells you that it would be a good thing. Your gut tells you, oh, well, of course, that would be better. If you're moving it from 5 days to 4, you get a whole other day to spend with family and do things, go on trips, whatever it is, right? And vice versa. It's like, oh, I'm not at work as long, all that stuff. So there are advantages to both. But so I did a little checking, and I could only find one study on the whole thing at that time. Now, since that time, there may have been more, because you see a lot more of the variable shifts and days of work and all these things occurring more often. But I'm going to dispel some of because I think that one study really kind of summed it up. And it was out of Utah. I don't know if it was University of Utah or Utah, whatever, somewhere in Utah. And it basically said, in short, to sum it all up, it said that you get about a 2-year, you're good to change something, the work schedule, the days, for about 2 years. But after 2 years, the novelty wears off. So what does that mean? It essentially means that they get bored. They get used to it. There's nothing fresh about it. It's become kind of part of their geography of the landscape of work now, right? It's just something that's always there. And it feels probably a little less like a gift, probably like a kid who gets a toy at Christmas time. The gift, the shine of that toy is worn off. You've just kind of, played with it until you're sick of playing with it. Well, so 2 years. So my thought process on that is okay, if 2 years is kind of what they came up with, then I would say 18 months. Right? 18 months. Every 18 months, there should be some nuance to work. Now, the difficulty is that perhaps 18 months is too soon to change from one thing to the other. I remember being in the Air Force when I was early in the Air Force, and we had shift work. Every 6 months, you would switch from day shift, or A shift to B shift and so forth. Days to nights and so on. We called it days, nights, and mids. Now they call it A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. Okay, calm down out there. Spurs are going nuts. Anyway, so every 6 months we would shift to a different shift, and it seemed okay. It was probably a little too quick, but but it worked out. I don't remember feeling like it was a bad thing. Now, I will say this. The second and third shifts don't have to deal with the administrative day. So they get interrupted by HR considerably less. HR and other administrators for this, that, and the third, considerably less. So productivity-wise, you should see more productivity out of a second and third shift versus a first shift or a day shift. And the reason why is because the day shift is getting interrupted as things come up. And if you were to track that, and you should, organizational leaders should track, I would have your team members and HR track how often they have to interrupt the employees to answer a question or to do with this or to do with that. And I'm using HR in general because they typically have things come up that are, out of necessity. But the reason why I say to track that is because that's probably time that's being interrupted from work. Now, if you can find ways to integrate those interruptions so that they aren't interruptions, I would do that. Streamline it, find a efficiency, an opportunity to bring, all your folks together, not all of them, but a team of them, to figure out, hey, how can we best accomplish these things? How can we, I'll tell you another thing that I instituted everywhere I go, I try to, everywhere I go, is radios. Now, for a lot of organizations, this is like, yeah, we've been using radios for years. Yeah, good. But you know what? Not all do. And let me ask you this. I don't mean just for your support, leadership and your management support staff. I'm talking about, do your employees have access to radios? Because you can get radios pretty inexpensively. And your supervisors can get, say, Motorola's or something like that. I'm not advertising, I'm just going with what I know. Because you need something that'll penetrate long distances. If you go outside if a supervisor goes outside of a building to go check on a pump or, just stuff, maintenance teams, that kind of thing. If they're doing work on the roof or whatever it is, those long-range radios are good. But you may not need long-range radios if your team is communicating with supervisors in a tighter range. But, pardon me, long story short, though, is radios are good. And the reason why is because you can ask these questions and get quick answers. And that works not only for HR and administrative things, but also works functionally too. So if you're talking about, I need to get, I need to confirm drawings that are being used on project blah, blah, blah. Well, I can call up on the radio and go, hey, can you confirm to me the drawings that you're using? Because maybe you're looking up something if you're an engineer or whoever. And validate information, right? And validating information is huge. So maybe I'll dub this one the radios. I don't know, whatever. So radios, super huge, very, very good. And I've also thought too, it's interesting how many people are afraid of cameras. We've got iPhones or phones, all kinds of phones out there with cameras. People are videoing every bloody thing they can, that they want to. So that's constantly going on. And, when I was in the Air Force and in other places where I worked, cameras were just second nature. They were just everywhere. And I find it pretty fascinating when smaller organizations or some people in organizations get all skittish about cameras. And I'm thinking, well, what are you doing that you're skittish about cameras? If anything, if it makes you think twice about doing something unsafe or whatever, good. It worked. That works. If that's, if that's what it took, I guess. Seriously, it's like, if you're getting paid to do the work, right? It's pretty simple. So, I've never understood that. I always thought that was fascinating that people get all skittish about cameras. It's like, you're not in your living room, So it is kind of fascinating. You're not working for yourself. You're not even working for the owners and the leadership. Technically, you're working for the customer. So everything you do is accountable to that customer. And those people who are in those other roles of leadership, management, and so forth, they're there to make sure that they're there as an advocate for the customer to provide resources, and they had best be providing you resources so that you can service those customers. If they're not, then that's problematic. Just as problematic as if you're doing things other than work, right? that you're concerned that there are cameras. I think probably the cameras more often than not are, more about liability and safety and these kinds of things. And of course, places get broke into and things of that nature. So I think it's more along those lines. But I thought that's been a fascinating thing. Another thing I would throw out there to anybody on a team, anybody in the organization that's on a team, the use of planning mechanisms. So a lot of times people will make their, calendars and that sort of thing. But to get in the habit of, before you leave work, and well, I use a typical Monday through Friday. I know there's so many people that work through different parts of the week, but we'll just use the last day of your week, okay? And I'm just going to use Friday because it's easy to talk about. So let's say it's Friday and you're about to wrap up. If you complete basically a framework schedule of what you have for the following week and submit that to your supervisor, your manager, your leadership. Why? Because when you go through the exercise of doing that on the last day of your work week, then it gets your mind to forward think a little bit. Forward thinking is what you're shooting for. Anticipatory thinking. And I'll probably do a separate video about anticipatory thinking, or forward thinking as my dad used to call it. But by doing that, you're forcing yourself to use forward thinking mechanisms in your head to plot and plan out your schedule for the following week. So if you can plan out about 60% of that, of the next week, say 60% of each day, things you want to get, knocked out, done, things that you have, along with things that you have to, a particular meeting or appointment, all those things are legitimate, anything. But typically wouldn't plan more than 60%. And the reason why is because you do need latitude. Because what will happen is that if you plan for 90%, thinking, well, I plan these 90% of my day out. Well, if you plan for 90%, you're going to fall short more often than not. Kind of harken back to the 80-20 rule. You're more likely to complete 80%, but if you plan for 60, you're going to feel pretty good when you hit 80, right? So you're kind of gaming the 80-20 rule a little bit, right? But plan for 60. That way, when emergencies or the unexpected do arise, you got to work with somebody, you got to solve a problem. Now your whole, your objectives aren't completely thrown out the window, and you can still accomplish what you need to accomplish. And you can recover from these things too to stay on track with your plan. So definitely think that turning a calendar in the Friday, your last day of the week, to your boss. And then, of course, if you're a supervisor or a manager, any leader, you get those, rudimentary plans, framework of their schedule, what they got planned. Then you can also go, oh, okay, I see you have this. Hey, don't forget I have a this, or I'm going to be coming into town, or whatever it is. See, this also affords an opportunity for communication because you are communicating up what you have planned. And if there's something that's not in your plan that maybe your boss wants to be addressed, then they'll let you know. Hey, don't forget, try to work this in. Oh, okay, whatever. Instead of having a misunderstanding or missing something completely the following week. So it's just a good habit. Even if they don't require you to turn it in, it's good to do because this way it kind of holds you on a track. You are essentially making yourself a list, a to-do list for the following week. I do find I'm a list person. I really think a to-do list is, essential. In fact, my kids growing up, my kids had it better than I had it. My mom would leave a list of like 10 things every day. It was exorbitant, but I got good about knocking them out pretty doggone quick. Well, my kids, all three of my kids, had a list that maybe got close to that. And of course, they could team up, right? But to this day, they do lists. They have lists. They knock, and they're doing pretty good. So I think the list methodology is actually a good thing. So I'll thank my mom for that. Actually, she didn't make, or did she make the list? Well, maybe she did make the list. Yeah, I guess she did. Hey, kudos to mom. The lists work. In fact, I used to have a book of lists, and it's kind of interesting. I recommend you taking a peek at that. But anyway, just wanted to have a chat with you this evening, go over a few things, throw in some little nuggets of little ideas, nothing super cosmic. We'll talk about forward thinking because I can take that in a whole lot of different, I can pull in a whole lot of examples where forward thinking really paid off for me as well. So I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you all for stopping by. Remember, hit like if you're here to protect love. Remember, 3 to 5 times a day, pushing that good domino, help people out, uplift somebody, and just generally be, a positive influence, right? And when you do that, not only are you transforming culture, you're transforming yourself, and that's growing, and that's important. So thanks for stopping by. We'll catch up with you next time. Take care.